Hello, my name is Saurabh Roy Chaudhary. My roll number is 17EC01046. Today I am going to explain about the first experiment which was conducted as a part of the Digital Signal Processing Lab course. The aim of the experiment was to study the performance of the following filters by using an Arduino board. First one was the moving average filter, and then we studied two types of derivative filter, which were first order difference filter, and the second one was 3-point central difference filter. So today I am going to explain this experiment in this format. First I will give you a brief idea about the theory, then we will move on to the experiment part and we will answer a few questions which we solved in the process of doing the experiment. We will go how we thought and how we came up with the solution of choosing the right filters and designing them, and then I will also explain the codes which were present, which were done during the experiment. One was the Arduino code, and for verification we also used MATLAB. So we should move on to the first type of filter, that was the moving average filter. The equation of the moving average filter is given by this. It's a simple low pass finite impulse response filter. It's commonly used for smoothing an array of sample data or signal. As you can see that it is taking L samples, xn minus 1, xn minus 2 and all, k is equal to 0. So it will start from xn plus xn minus 1 till L minus 1 we put over here, and we are averaging over 1 by L. So this is the averaging factor and we are getting a single output. Now it's a very simple low pass filter as it's able to filter out the high frequency noisy component from the input signal. Now this is because as we are taking an average of a few samples of the signal, the smoothness of the output is also increasing, and the sharp modulations which were present in the data are made increasingly burnt. The sharp modulations are caused by the high frequency component of the signal. But we should also consider the fact that at the same time the cutoff frequency also decreases significantly, because when you are smoothing down the signals, we are missing out upon the high frequency component also. That will be pictorially shown by a MATLAB code, which I will explain in the later part of this presentation. Now moving on to the equations. This equation we had seen in the previous slide. If we take the Z transform of it, then we come across this equation, and this is the impulse response of this L point moving average filter. This can be also pictorially explained using this block diagram, where the Z minus ones are signifying a time delay, and 1 by L is the coefficient for averaging this thing, and this is the summation symbol, and we are getting one single output. Now let's move on to the derivative filter. Derivative filter is a periodic bandpass finite impulse response filter. It's generally used in image processing field for quantitative measurement for the rate of change in pixel brightness, information present in a digital image. In a digital image, if you see, there's a lot of boundaries and sharp contrast can be seen in those images. Now this derivative filter actually highlights the high slope region. So whenever there's a high contrast, high change, the high slope, which if we observe in the magnitude of the pixel, then that can be filtered out. Now there are two types of derivative filter which we studied that day. One was the first order difference filter, and the second was the 3-point central difference filter. Both are causal and linearly time invariant filter. In first order difference filter, it depended on the current input and the previous input, and in the 3-point central difference we were considering two input sample about the input sample to produce the output. This will be more clear when we observe this equation. This is yn is equal to xn minus xn minus 1. So here we are saying this is one time delay, and there are 2 units of time delay here. Now if we take the z transform of this equation, we will arrive at this equation, and if we take the z transform of this equation, we will arrive at this equation. These two are the pictorial representation of these two equations, where z minus 1 is signifying a time delay of 1 and z minus 2 is signifying a time difference of 2. Also notice the minus and plus sign over here. The reason being that z is 1 minus z to the power minus 1 and 1 minus z to the power minus 2, and this is why this minus sign is over here. Now I tried to give a brief idea about the theory. Now let's move on to the experiment. So for this experiment we used the Arduino Due board. It's a 32-bit ARM core based on 32-bit ARM core microcontroller with all these specification which has been mentioned in the slide, and it's a perfect board for conducting these type of experiments. It's a powerful it's good for conducting a powerful larger scale Arduino project. Now the first question which we came across during the experiment was to choose a filter to smooth out high frequency noises present in the signal. So as I explained in the theory, for smoothing out the high frequency noises, the best filter which we studied was the moving average filter, and for our experiment we took it L is equal to 0.008 into n we took as 1000 samples which were given as the input, and L, when we calculate this, we'll get it as 8. Now this can be taken differently by different users according to the need, and L is equal to 8 was sufficing our issue, and we were getting a good enough output. So this was the Arduino code which we used that day to get the desired outputs. This is the input which we were given. There were 1000 samples. I have shortened it up so that the slide doesn't become much messy. So there are 1000 samples inside this bracket, and this is the y1000 which we are initializing as 0. Then n, by this we are finding the size of how many samples were there, and this is the fraction value 0.008 which we chose here, and L is equal to frac into n. So this equation only we are using here. Now in an Arduino code there are two parts. One is the void setup and another is the void loop. Now void setup usually runs only once, and the void loop keeps on running until you stop the program or reset the Arduino. So what we are doing by the void setup is that we are setting the baud rate equal to 9600, and in this loop we are writing the algorithm which we derived. Now int I equal to by this for loop we are going across all these samples, and this part is quite important. J greater than I minus L. So L was calculated from this. So this shows that till what value we should take. So suppose I is equal to 9. So we will add I is equal to 9, I is equal to 7, 6, 5 till 1. Now this this part was shown so that if suppose we have a value I is equal to 5, then 5 minus 8 becomes minus 3, and minus 3 can't be done because we have the index is starting from 0. So to ensure that the index is greater than equal to 0, we have put this condition, and this is why I divided by L, because we want to divide it by the averaging factor. Now in this loop we are printing the graph. Both the plots we are doing on the same graph so that we can compare easily, and in order to differentiate between the two plots we have given some difference, so that there's a difference of 300. If we hadn't given this part, then they will superimpose on each other and it would have been difficult for us to analyze. Now this is the output which we got, and it is surely giving us very good result, as all this spurious noise which we can see in this graph has been minimized after passing through the moving average filter. This has smoothened a lot, and this, now to verify this, we also wrote a MATLAB code. So these are the basic MATLAB commands in order to set up the clear screen and all. Then B1 and A1, this is quite important. So this we are setting up the numerator, and this we are setting up the denominator of the Z transform equation we got. If you remember, this was 1 plus z to the power minus 1 plus z to the minus, so we were summing up. So 8 samples were there with a time delay. So all these coefficients are 1. So that's why there's a string of 1 is over here. And here we are dividing by 1 by, we are multiplying by 1 by 8. So denominator has 8 values and then 7 zeros. Now in this function we are giving B1 and A1 to get H and W. So this gives the magnitude response and this gives the phase response that we have plotted way over here. Now we have done W by pi I to normalize the x-axis. So this is the graph which we have got. So this is the graph. So we can see that in the low frequency region it's acting almost like a low pass filter, right? Because in this part the gain is very less, and in this part it's quite high. Now moving on to the next section of this experiment, we were asked to choose a filter to emphasize high slow portions in the signal. So in earlier questions we were asked how to smoothen the signal, and now we have to emphasize the high slow portions in the signal. Now for this, as we saw in the theory, derivative filter proves to a very good filter for this, but also we should take a bit care, because before using this filter we also need to smoothen out the signal to get rid of noises to get a good output. Because if there are noises, then due to those noises we can observe high slope portions which is not actually present in the original signal which we were given, but it is due to the noise. So first we are filtering out the noise, and then we are finding the high slope portions in the signal. So this is the Arduino code which we wrote for this derivative filter. Again, I need not explain this part again. This is the input which we are taking, and this is YA, YB. So this is for first order, and this is for 3-point central difference. So we have taken this. This is the size, and we are finding the size of how many elements we have taken. This again is initializing the baud rate. This is the moving average function we have written. So this Arduino code is in 2 slides. So this first we are studying the moving average function. So what all parameters it is taking? So first one, it is taking the f fraction, then n number of samples, then x input, and y that is the output in which we are going to make the changes. This again goes with the standard equation which we had written earlier. Entirely is f into n, and we are initializing yi equal to 0 at first. Then we are traversing through all the elements, and again that same case we are saying, the condition we are saying. So like how many samples we are taking, 8 or 800, and also we are ensuring that it's not going negative, and then we are multiplying with the averaging factor. So with this we are completing the moving average function, and now we are moving on to the void loop, which inside which whatever we write, which goes on and on. Now first we are calling the moving average function with 0.008 value as f, this value, and these two are the additions over here. This is the single first order difference equation, or difference or filter, and this is the 3-point filter which we discussed the equation, xn minus xn minus 1, and this is xn minus xn minus 2. So here the inputs we are taking as y, because ya is the output here and y is the input over here. This is the symbol we took in this code. Now we got all these outputs, and we are just plotting them on the same graph in order to analyze them in a better fashion. So here we see three graphs. The blue one is signifying the smoothened PPG signal, and the red one is the output of the first order difference filter, and the green one is the output of 3-point central difference filter. So what we observe is that wherever there was a high contrast or high change, there we were able to magnify the thing, and hence we were able to emphasize the high slope portions in the signal. So our objective is getting over, and it's fairly smoothened too. Now in order to verify the same thing, we used MATLAB for it. These are the basic commands as I said earlier, and again b1 a1 are the numerator for the first numerator and denominator respectively for the first order difference filter, and b2 and a2 are the numerator and denominator for the 3-point central difference filter. So this is due to 1 plus z to the power minus 1, and this is due to 1 plus z to the power minus 2. So, and this is just dividing by 1. We are not exactly multiplying with any factor as such other than 1. So again we are using the frequency z, this magnitude response, and the phase response we are plotting. So here we calculated those things, and here we are plotting. So subplot 2 to 2,1, there's the magnitude response we are plotting for those two filters, and then we are plotting the phase response for those two filters. And again the x-axis was normalized, which you can see over here. So these are the two things we got, magnitude response and the phase response. Also, like we can I will later on show another plot which will help us to even visualize this better, as I have taken more values of L in order to show that how changing the L will increase or decrease the, or affect the low pass filter property of the differential filter. Section C. So now we were asked to design a moving average filter with L is equal to floor pointed into N to extract the baseline drift component from a signal. So first we should know why this baseline drift component arises in a signal. It generally arises because if a sensor is attached to a moving body, or the sensor itself is moving, then there can be a drift, or there can be a shift in the plot which we get, or in the values which we get due to the movement of the sensor. So that we need to eradicate, so that we are able to get the original signal and get the proper information, or else we have to work with the distorted information which isn't right. Now the steps involved in this experiment are as follows. The given signal will be fed to the MA filter to remove the high frequency noise using the MA filter with small value. First we are using small values of it, and then we are using L is equal to 800. So first we are removing very high frequencies, and in the second part we are only having very low frequencies with us. Now this will actually this will actually give you an idea that very few very low frequency signal is present in the signal, and that is actually the baseline drift component, because the frequency of this baseline drift component is very low, because it's caused due to the movement of the sensor, or some other deformity in the sensor itself. Now when we subtract this from this b minus a minus b, then we get the original signal back. Now to explain the dependence on the value of L, I have got this graph where it's showing the magnitude plot of XZ for different number of moving L samples. So for L is equal to 2, as you can see, this graph is like this, and for L greater than equal to 7, it's like this. So as you are seeing that as we are increasing the value of L, the higher frequencies are getting more cut off. So this part of the frequency is being cut off by this, but not by this. So same is happening in this case also. So when we are using L is equal to 800, the graph will be something like this, and when the L is equal to 8, it will be something like this. So this part, so by this part we are having very low component signal, low frequency component of the signal, and by this part we are removing this high frequency, very high frequency, which represent the noise. Now we move on to the Arduino code. In Arduino code we get the input, okay, X, Y, Z, and then N is the size. This again runs for one time, and we are initializing the baud rate as 9600, and this is the moving average function. We are initializing yi is equal to 0. Then we are setting up this condition so that the index doesn't become negative, and we are taking up to L samples. We are adding over it and then multiplying with the averaging factor. Now this is the main loop equation which runs on continuously. So first we are calling moving average function by giving 0.008 as the factor, and then we are giving 0.8 as the factor. So this actually represent 8 samples. This one, L is equal to 8 with very small L value, and this 0.8 represent L is equal to 800, which represents a larger value. And now we will subtract these two equations, y minus zi. So this is the first order difference equation which we are doing, and we are printing the yi, the xi, and the zi. So this one is the original PPG signal, and this one is the corrected PPG signal without noise and baseline drift, because we are subtracting this from this, so we are getting this. Now comes our last part of this experiment. So in this we have we had to find the output of signal processing system, which perform the first order derivative filter and then perform the MA filter with n equal to n. So this experiment actually involves the cascading of the derivative filter with the moving average filter to get the smooth and high slow portion of the PVG signal. So here we were first having the derivative filter, and then after that we were putting an MA filter to smoothen it out further. So this is the input part of the code. And then this is to find the size. This is to initialize the baud rate as 9600. Now this is the moving average function. So this is initialized to 0, and this again the same conditions, so that index is not negative, and we are taking L samples, and moving averaging factor we are multiplying, and this is the main loop which will run on continuously. So this is the yi xi, this difference we are finding out. So first we are finding out the difference, passing to the difference filter, and then we are applying the moving average filter over it, and then we are plotting these two values. This is the xi and the yi and the zi. The zi is the output over here. So the blue signal is the original PPG signal, and then the red one is the output of the first order difference filter of the original PPG signal. And when we pass on to the moving average filter, we see that this spurious noise was removed, and we get a relatively smoother signal showing where we were having a high contrast. So thank you. I hope this presentation was helpful for you. Thank you.